Hello, Dem. You've come to the wrong place at the wrong time, so it must be the wrong stuff. Guy Denton, how's it going?
People just can't keep away, Matt. We keep trying to repulse them. I think we've even repulsed ourselves, and yet it's irresistible. They keep being drawn back, and
I keep trying to get out. They keep pulling me back in.
That's right.
And speaking of that quote, which of course is the great Al Pacino. Have you seen Scent of a Woman, Guy Denton?
Not in yes, but a long time ago. Not in a long time.
First of all, it's a Thanksgiving movie, as we've established. I found myself in a similar situation where my son, after receiving 3 demerits at his school, was brought before a board this week, yesterday in fact, and I prepared for this hearing by watching the final scene. And I was going to go in there and be like, out of order, you're the one that's out of order. You know, Beckett may be a lot of things, but he is not a snitch. Baird man. Luckily, I didn't have to say a word. Anyway, he goes back to school today. Another demerit. I'm not joking. I don't know what's going to happen. I may have to pull him out of this school. But anyway, that's how my week has been so far, guys, since you and I had our very romantic Thanksgiving holiday together.
We did. Well, before we come to that and some chicanery that I have planned for the coming weekend, you're going to have to explain to me, because this is all alien to me. What exactly is a demerit? Is it just like a bad grade? Is it like something they give you if you misbehave?
That's more what it is. Yeah. Okay. It's more for misbehaving. The latest is apparently he was talking, the teacher tells him to quit talking, and then he just starts drawing and ignoring. There were more problematic things that happened as well. So I guess he's on at least 4 demerits now.
Right.
I mean, I could count like my entire 13, if you count kindergarten, 13-year career in, public schools. I think I had to stay after school one time, but I was so afraid of my parents. And I think that's what's missing here is a certain amount of fear that we've not instilled. But I don't know. But yeah, it's I was ready. Yesterday I was ready to defend him, by pulling out the Al Pacino. What kind of, horse and pony show are you pulling here? Out of order. You're out of order. And now today I'm like, yeah, I guess he's kind of an ornery naughty boy. Based on the track record.
My son? No, my son is wrong. The school is wrong. The whole Department of Education is wrong. No, I think you might be onto something with that, because I do remember that one of the primary factors that always dissuaded me from getting into trouble when I was in school was the fact that I don't want to make us sound like some kind of evil despot or anything like that, because that couldn't be further from the truth. I love my mother, but I was also terrified of my mother if she was ever angry or annoyed. And the prospect of getting into trouble and having that coming back to her and her being furious and scolding me about it was terrifying enough to deter me from ever committing anything ever getting into trouble that was that severe.
I think some of it is that we're easier parents, and I think some of it is that my kids are very they're tougher and more stubborn than I was. Like, I couldn't imagine a teacher like being mad at me. You know what I mean? Like, I would have been like, well, what did I do wrong? I'm so
right.
But they don't have that problem. Apparently, they're okay with it.
I would have too. Yeah, I completely relate to what you're saying. What's funny is, and I think this is also an interesting thing, I can't remember if we talked about this when I was with you last week, but seeing your boys was actually and especially seeing them interact with you and your wife was very surreal for me, because they really reminded me of what I was like at their age. And
that concerns me, Guy. That concerns me greatly.
That's right. But I think what's interesting is, when I think back on growing up and being around that age and getting into my teenage years, right? To my recollection, I never really had too much of a wild, rebellious, angst-ridden phase where I wanted to dye my hair and smash things and burn the world down, right? I was always, to my memory, for the most part, I was always pretty happy. What I do remember, though, is that sort of the stage of not being, a really young kid anymore, but also not being a, say, 14, 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, where you're really starting to become more aware of yourself and develop your own passions and interests and figure out who you are is kind of an odd limbo period. I
Yes.
guess that whole middle school period is kind of a
That's the
strange
worst.
time, yeah.
It's tough.
And that desire to do your own thing and
Yes.
and say, I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to
Old
listen to
man.
you, Matt. I
What
don't
do
want
you
to.
know, old man?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I wanted to ask you, and this is, somewhat pertinent. Um, when you were over here for Thanksgiving, we watched, I think, your first viewing ever of Christmas Vacation, right?
That is true. Yes.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, I saw, much like Scent of a Woman, the original Vacation with Chevy Chase, the 80s one, is one of those movies that I saw a long time ago. Remember enjoying, maybe moderately, maybe a lot. I couldn't really tell you because I don't really remember anything too in depth about it beyond that. And I had never seen Christmas Vacation, which is an embarrassing blemish in my pop cultural, an embarrassing lacuna in my pop cultural knowledge, you might say. But what's funny is too, I don't think I told you I had no idea, first of all, that John Hughes wrote that movie. But
A lot of stars in it. I've seen it many times, and I learned that Johnny Galecki, who is, Big Bang Theory and Roseanne, plays Rusty, Chevy Chase's son in that movie. There's a lot of famous people, including Julia Louis-Dreyfus, plays sort of a yuppie next door neighbor in that movie as well.
And Juliette Lewis is the daughter,
She's
right?
the daughter, yeah.
Juliette Lewis is one of those actresses when every time I see her in something, I can never remember her name, and I can never remember what else she's been in, and then suddenly someone will say it, and it'll all come flooding back. But no, I was going to say, a lot of pretty much every John Hughes movie I have actually never seen. I've never
Wow.
seen The Breakfast Club. I've never seen a lot of those big iconic.
You're a little too young, right? You're just under
Yeah,
yeah.
and so like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, any of those that I think for Gen X's was sort of big, iconic American staples, I had never really got exposed to. And Christmas Vacation, I would throw into that bucket. And so seeing it for the first time was interesting. But I enjoyed it, and I think we talked about this afterward. What's sort of I don't know. I was going to say what's most interesting about it, but really what's saddest about it, I think, is that it's really a reminder of how talented Chevy Chase actually was
Yes.
and how famous Chevy Chase was
Yep.
and how steep of a decline ensued in Chevy Chase's career just a few years after that came out, when he went from being on top of the world to humiliating himself with that talk show and then, correct me if I'm wrong, right, but being pretty irrelevant for a while before he started
Except
to make
for
a comeback.
getting rid of Britta, one of my favorite songs.
Right.
Is that the name of it?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I do
She's a
remember the lyrics.
GDB.
she's a no good B. But before Community, right? He hadn't done anything in quite a while, and that was his big.
If you were buying stock on a comedian, in 1985 or something, you might have bought Chevy Chase after Fletch, but you would have lost money, I think, because it did not pan out the way that we might have thought. Hopefully, going back to being a parent, hopefully buying stock in my kids, now's the low, buy low.
Right.
It's going to go higher. And it made me think, Aiden, what would I do? God forbid, if I were president and I had a son who needed to be pardoned, what would I do? Maybe I made a pledge I would never pardon this kid, but he's been through a lot. Is it the right thing or wrong thing to do? What did you make? Obviously, I'm talking about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden had said he would not pardon Hunter. But of course, Donald Trump has pledged vengeance on a lot of people. What did you, and I think there's a sense that that Biden has really betrayed kind of the cause of norms and institutions. But what do you make of it?
I think, first of all, that if there is ever a competition for smoothest transitions in podcasting history, we will know whether this is a just universe or not by whether that takes number one, because that was just sublime.
Thank you.
But
I went to podcasting school. There's the Podcasting Academy. If you want to be a podcaster or just look like one, for $9.99 a month, you too can have those segues.
I don't think To your actual question, though, I don't find it remotely surprising. I mean, it's interesting that you use the word betrayed there, because potentially to Biden, this is simply an act of taking an eye for an eye, right? I mean, if you're Biden and you see yourself as having been betrayed by your own party and everyone who you thought was your closest, all of the people who you thought were your closest allies in politics and were firmly in your corner and were telling you and had spent months telling you that you had a surefire chance of being re-elected president and continuing to be this transformative figure, despite the fact that every poll and every metric indicated otherwise, just for those people to suddenly turn on you and all try to force you out and all try to publicly disparage you in the press and say that you were incompetent and new blood was required and it was an embarrassment and so on. Naturally, I think you're going to be a little bit embittered. And I think at this point for Biden, Biden has largely disappeared in recent months. None of the media conversation, the public conversation, really hasn't concerned Biden ever since he stepped down, and ever since the storm of that catastrophic first debate between him and Trump blew over. I think to Biden, this is simply an act of, you know what? I don't care. I want to do this. I'm done. This is the end of my career. That's that's all, folks.
Yeah. Well, look, and I think Biden made he made a sacrifice for his party in July when he stepped down. He got pushed out, but he ultimately agreed to go. And isn't that enough? Maybe that's enough to ask of him. Maybe now he gets one. He gets to protect his son, and not just from the recent, alleged crimes, but for a decade, right? I think that the pardon extended back to like 2014. So that's a good, that's a blanket pardon, as they call it.
What do you think you would do? Because I mean, I know, obviously, I'm not a parent, Matt. I can't really relate or understand. I can appreciate that it's probably the hardest job in the world, really, to be a parent, right? But if you were in his position, do you think you would have issued that pardon, or?
I mean, I really say there, but for the grace of God, go I. I really do. It's. I know there's a lot of people coming down hard on him. I know it's not a good look. I honestly think that presidents shouldn't have the power to just unilaterally pardon people. I think changing that would require a constitutional amendment, but I just don't think it's a good idea. There should be some process, some board, blue ribbon panel that has to approve it or something, or certainly not relatives. Having said that, Joe Biden's first wife and I think one of his children maybe died in that car crash, and then of course his son Beau died subsequently. He has been through a lot, and we know that Trump is like trying to appoint Matt Gaetz and Kash Patel. I mean, like, Pete Hegseth. Like, what are they gonna do? Probably nothing good for Hunter Biden. So I have a lot of empathy, I think, for Biden's decision. And like I said, he took one for the team. He did what they wanted, and I think he probably feels like he's given enough for the cause.
And I mean, to what you were just saying, I mean, it can't be a pleasant, these final days in the Oval Office, you can't exactly be feeling joyful or even particularly pleasant and secure with how the past 4 years unfolded, right? I mean, he was elected. The whole premise, the whole kernel of his presidency, he was elected on a promise of restoring stability and then governing over a moderate, temperamental, normal kind of administration to right the ship after 4 years of madness and national embarrassment that he could then use to serve as a bridge to a new generation, a new group of leaders, whatever sort of coalition that the Democrats wanted to stand for, whatever coalition, whatever the Democrats wanted to represent, that could follow him, that he would need to be a seamless transition. And really, he failed to deliver on both of those things. Donald Trump is coming back, and his presidency just brought in a different flavor of chaos when he tried to overstretch. And I'm sure for him, it's a time for deep reflection. And ultimately, I think what you're saying is right. He's a person just like the rest of us, right? He's governed by a lot of the same self-interest, a lot of the same, and like any father would, he wants to protect his son. And in what I'm sure is a difficult time for him, it's not that you can call it many things, but you can't really call it a surprising decision on his part.
No, and other people did predict it. I think Jonah Goldberg predicted it. Jamie Weinstein predicted it. It was sort of predictable, or at least the possibility was certainly always there. The weird thing to me is that like Joe Biden, almost all of his errors happened 3.5 to 4 years ago. I mean, picking Kamala Harris was probably a mistake, I think. But certainly those executive orders on the border were a mistake. Trying to be LBJ and FDR and the big spending, the second sort of big COVID stimulus back to back after Republicans passed one in, I think, December of 20 what was it, 2020. And so, and then Afghanistan, and I guess it was in the summer of 2021 he never recovered from that. And so I think that he had 3.5 years where he really didn't make a lot of mistakes, but he never recovered from the errors he made early on in his presidency, and he didn't have the communication skills to make the case for the good things that he did. And so it's like I was president and all I got was his T-shirt or whatever. Like if all he can do is save his son on his way out, and let's be clear about this, it's not just on his way out of the White House. This is sort of him. He's on his way out in many ways. If he can save his son, maybe that's his consolation prize.
And all of those errors on his part compounded by the chaos that erupted globally, right? What we saw in Ukraine, what we saw in Israel, and what we're still seeing in both of those places. Coupled with the fact that I think, yes, you nailed it with he was simply unable to communicate. His age became the defining issue of his whole existence, never mind his whole presidency or his whole potential candidacy in 2024. It was something he simply couldn't overcome because every time he would ever appear publicly, it was inescapable. It was the only thing that it was possible that I think anyone watching at home or anyone concerned about any of those issues who may have even seen him as a force for respite or a force for renewal at one time could focus on. And it ultimately proved to be his undoing. And I don't think the Democrats fully appreciated the real significance of that until it was much too late.
So I have a column up in the Hill where I'm making this case where, Democrats can beat themselves up over all the things they did wrong and what they could have done different. But maybe it's as simple as this. There are certain people who are rock stars and they get elected. And if you go back to 1980, you got Ronald Reagan, you got Bill Clinton, you got George W. Bush, you got Barack Obama, and you got Donald Trump. And then we've had these one-termers, George H.W. Bush and Joe Biden. But the Reagans, the Clintons, the W's, the Obamas, they had this star power, and Trump has it too: celebrity status, charisma, call it what you will. I think it may be just that simple, that at the presidential level, I don't think this applies to the House or even the Senate, but at the presidential level, there's certain people that you're just not going to beat. Or if you do, it's an anomaly. And it's sort of like, Tom Brady won a lot of Super Bowls, I don't know. I think, it's not 100% of the case, right? It still matters that you raise money. It still matters that you do door to door and get out the vote and all that, but it matters on the margins. I feel like 70% of the campaign is just like Donald Trump was more charismatic and, to his fans, certainly funny and likable than Kamala Harris was. And usually that rock star candidate wins. And so if Democrats, rather than like trying to fight this war over and they're not going to run against Trump again. And if they do, it's game over anyway, right? That means he's seized control. So I get that they're trying to like learn the lessons from the past, but the real lesson is they need to find a celebrity. And whether that's somebody from the ranks of politics or the entertainment world, they need like someone who has charisma if they want to win.
And of all the people you just named, right, all of them had an image, and crucially, all of them had a persona. And that was what made them so commanding, what made them so charismatic. And the funny thing about Biden always was that Biden's greatest strength in 2020, and the reason why Biden was elected was because because he was utterly colorless, right? Because he seemed like the antithesis of that, and that was what people wanted after four chaotic years where that was taken to a very unpleasant extreme in a
Yes.
presidency.
But I do think the extenuating circumstances following Trump and COVID, they were ready for a calmer, quieter candidate. And also because of COVID, Biden was able to run that campaign from his basement effectively.
Yes.
But I think that one is an asterisk. I really do.
Yes, exactly. And also now, I think at this point, Biden represented the great return to normalcy, the blowback against Trump, right? Well, now Trump has been reelected, so there's no point in mounting another return to normalcy campaign of that sort in
Yeah.
2028. It's done. People wanted Trump
Yeah.
back. Trump was handed a powerful victory. The Democrats now need to move forward. They need to figure out a way to recalibrate and reassess. And I think a key way of doing that is exactly what you're describing. Finding someone new, an Obama-like figure, a Clinton-like figure, who
Well,
can
the
have a
problem is
commanding message.
you can't plan on that though. That's the
Yes.
problem. Like you can build the DNC, but you can't plan on Barack Obama showing up, a savior to arise from these streets. It just kind of happens, right? They usually come out of nowhere almost.
Of course. Absolutely. But I mean, 2028 is 4 years away. And to your point, exactly. Barack Obama came from nowhere. If you had said in 2007, if you had said in 2006 who was going to be president in 2008, if you and I had been having this conversation
Hillary
in
Clinton.
2006, exactly. I strongly doubt that either of us would have, one or both of us would have confidently said, Barack Obama, that plucky young man from Illinois, he'll be the one who sweeps the election and changes the very face of American politics, right? So
I mean, I think conventional wisdom was Obama needed to get some experience in the Senate and bide his time and learn. And then at some point, he would have been ready.
Exactly. And so any number of transformative things could happen in the next year, right? Never mind the next 3 to 4 years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but hopefully for our sakes and for the sake of the country, things start to trend in a more positive direction. Because I think there is certainly enough of an appetite among the public at large for that kind of renewal and for that kind of return to a stable, and not just a stable and sensible kind of leadership, but also a kind of optimistic and commanding and powerful is not the word I'm searching for, but I think you see what I'm trying to get, right? A candidate like that who can command that sort of message and that sort of new way forward.
Well, speaking of stable, sober leadership, Donald Trump has nominated Pete Hegseth to be the Secretary of Defense. There were reports that he has been drunk in public on numerous occasions, allegations that he has made untoward advances on women, and yada, yada, yada. His mom, there was did you see this?
I did. I was going to ask you if you saw it.
Yeah. So his mom wrote an email to him, really shaming him, siding with his second wife, I guess, whom he was allegedly cheating on with his third wife. And this ended up in the New York Times, I think it was. And then his mom went on Fox and Friends to defend him recently. I don't know if you saw that.
I heard that it happened. I did not see the clip.
So apparently, Pete Hegseth has vowed that if he becomes Secretary of Defense, he will not drink anymore while he is. So I've also made this offer that I will effectively curtail my drinking if I am nominated and confirmed to be your Secretary of Defense or any cabinet position. I will I'll go minimum of 4 years without touching any alcohol. I'm willing to make that that sacrifice for you, Guy.
It worked for Donald Trump. You never know
yeah.
that.
He doesn't drink at all, right? He hasn't had anything to drink. He's in you're basically on the Donald Trump path. So
I am, yes, unequivocally.
Yeah.
And Biden doesn't drink either, right? Am I making that up, or I think that's true?
I'm more in the Winston Churchill camp. No, I do wonder though, because Donald Trump, maybe he should drink. Like maybe it would be helpful if every once in a while. I know his brother struggled with alcoholism, right? So I get it. But maybe the world would be better if Donald Trump had a glass of brandy. I don't know, whatever, once in a while.
I I don't know if I would could encourage him drinking hard liquor while he's within spitting distance of a nuclear button. But
What could possibly go wrong or even be different than it is now? He would probably be like utterly like rational, like
right. Well, he is one of those people who seems incredibly drunk despite the fact that he's always sober. So you have to wonder exactly. Yes, maybe
Yeah.
he would transform into the poised gentleman if he took a couple of drinks.
He becomes very, very prudent and cautious and conservative and,
That's
and
right.
proper.
He can quote the Bible suddenly too. I'm sure.
2 Corinthians. All right. Well, let's just jump ahead to the end. I know you've got a story to not tell us, but maybe prep us for what you're going to be doing. But I wanted to recommend a lifestyle before we get out of here. Now, I know you're not up on the American football, but I was a Washington Redskins fan for many years, for decades actually. And then, they changed their name. Football was going through this, woke thing. So I jumped off the bandwagon. They changed their name. Dan Snyder, who used to be the owner, was just horrific. He was like trying to lose. He was, raping and pillaging the fan base. So I jumped off the bandwagon after, again, decades of supporting this team. And it has been amazing. And so now what I do is I'm sort of like Annie Savoy and Bull Durham. Each year I pick a couple teams to root for. So like right now I'm rooting for the Buffalo Bills because they're underdogs. I'm rooting for the San Diego, now the LA Chargers because of Jim Harbaugh, and they're going to be up and coming. And I'm rooting for Russell Wilson, who's this once great veteran who struggled in Denver, and now he's in Pittsburgh. So those are like 3 interesting storylines, and I don't have to like live and die with this football team that's put me through so much. I pick each season some things to root for. Maybe that makes me disloyal. Maybe I'm not a true fan, but I have found it to be a much happier life. So if you're out there and you have also done this, maybe I'm a mercenary fan. Maybe I don't know what you would call me. Like I rooted for Tom Brady when he was in Tampa Bay just because he was old. And I'm like, hey, if you're over 40, I could be you. I could be out there on the gridiron. So anyway, that is my advice. Do not be loyal to a football team. Just, move around like I did. Guy, tell us about your plans this weekend.
Well, I was going to say maybe it's a shame, abiding by that logic, that there aren't as many political parties as there are football teams. Maybe that could solve a lot of the strife we've experienced in this country in recent years.
Yeah, don't be blind. I don't like the blind loyalty for like, what are you just rooting for the uniform, the burgundy and gold? They look like ketchup and mustard. Come on. What loyalty? Like, what is the connective tissue between the Joe Gibbs, John Riggins, Joe Theismann, Mark Mosley era of the NFL and the Washington Commanders today? They don't even play in Washington, D.C. anymore. They play in Landover, Maryland, or Ral John, or whatever that is. So I'm not a sucker. The parties change, teams change. When they start sending me the check, I'll be loyal to them. How about that?
Yeah, I have to say, I wouldn't recommend that anyone goes out to watch anything in Landover, Maryland.
No.
Despite the fact that if you now live in the D.C., Maryland, Northern Virginia area, you won't have a choice in a lot of cases.
Now, nothing I just said applies to baseball, where you and I, as everyone knows, we live and die with the Baltimore Orioles. And we are 100% locked in on that team. Baseball is different than this. Football's, George Carlin did it better than I could do it, but they're different sports. So this only applies to football.
Well, it's like George Will said about baseball. They say baseball is just a game. I think I'm not mangling this quote. They say baseball is just a game. Well, the Grand Canyon is just a big cavern in the desert, but not all games are created equal.
I agree. The Orioles would have to do a lot to lose me because it's not just the Orioles. Well, number one, they're trying to win. And number two, just the nostalgia that I have, the embedded loyalty I have for that team would be very hard to erode. But with football, I like to watch the games. All right, Guy, what are you doing this weekend, man?
I was gonna say, yeah, well, while you're engaging in something very normal and solidly American, like watching football, I will be traveling down to. Actually, I guess it's also a very American activity that I'll be partaking in. True, but certainly not a normal one, I guess, by any conventional metric. I am traveling down to Sarasota, Florida, to attend an event called Kiss Cancer Goodbye 3. Um, which is people just listening to the audio of this, you really should tune into the video just so you can see Matt's face as he processes this in real time. I'm
Kiss
sure
cancer goodbye or kiss cancer?
kiss cancer goodbye.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Good.
it is. Yes, kiss is not on the side of cancer. Thankfully. It is this is a 3-day music festival slash kiss convention hybrid thing taking place in Sarasota with all of the profits, allegedly.
You just told me that Kiss retired and they're never performing again, though, right?
Well, Matt, I am
You told
so
me that
glad.
like a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
I am so glad you asked, Matt, because technically it's not an official Kiss thing.
Okay.
And actually, the Gene Simmons and the other 3 members of Kiss who actually finished out that tour, none of them will. Well, actually, no, one of them, but most of them will not be there. It's not an official Kiss thing. It's a bunch of former members of Kiss and former Kiss collaborators all gathering to entertain a bunch of maladjusted nerds like me, with all of the profits allegedly going to cancer research or one of those big
We hope.
charity. We hope, yes.
We hope, yeah.
We with the cost of ticket prices and everything else, yes, we do certainly hope. But I went to one of these last year. This year's is going to be 3 days, Friday to Sunday. And if I return, Matt, if I make it through, I'm sure I'll have a colorful account for you next week.
AEI lets you off for this?
Well, I don't I don't disclose it. Yeah, maybe as far as they know, maybe I have a funeral to go to tomorrow.
And are there so I'm sure like there'll be multiple, we'll call them tribute bands, but they're constituted of former members, right? But
yeah, it's an odd thing. I guess you could call it a lineup of tribute bands, but none of the combinations of musicians are technically active bands. It's a bunch of musicians who actually were members of Kiss, and then others who either wrote songs with Kiss or recorded on Kiss played parts on Kiss albums or toured in solo project bands with former members of Kiss, all coming together to celebrate the magic of Kiss and to raise money to fight our most hated of diseases, Matt. So it really, my question is why anyone would not want to spend 3 days doing this.
Is it just like musical performances the whole time, or is it speeches, panel discussions, autograph signings, Q&A?
I think it's a bunch of musical performances with the most famous people there also, I guess, signing autographs and doing other stuff. And there's also a big, at least they didn't do this last year, but from what I'm given to understand, there's going to be a big actual expo portion with vendors and memorabilia and things like that too. So
cool.
Fun for the whole maladjusted family, Matt.
Are you bringing your Halloween mask?
If I can fit it, I don't want to check a bag at the airport, so if I can fit it into my carry-on, then yes. Although they might not let me
wear it
through.
on the plane, man. What could go wrong?
I guess once I'm through security, there's nothing to prohibit that, right?
I would highly encourage that. What are the odds that you will bump into people there that you have already they're part of your Kiss community?
Well, I'm going as part of the Kiss community. Actually, 4 of us the 3 friends I'm going with all live in different parts of Florida. So actually, one of them lives in Michigan, so he's flying in.
So you have at least 3 or 4 Kiss friends already there.
And a couple others too who just aren't staying with us, actually. Yes, but we've organized an Airbnb, so we'll be staying there. I'm flying out tomorrow to.
That's
I think
awesome.
the plan is to all get together, go for lunch, and then head over and see the festivities kick off.
I love it. Are there any women under the age of 30 at these things?
If there were, Matt, I'd be married by now. There are a few. I think there are like unicorns. I mean, what's funny is really a lot of the young people are people's kids, right? So
Yeah.
either they're young kids or like teenagers or full families coming. Although it is obviously it skews heavily Gen X and male, but at pretty much everything like this that I've been to, basically every age and demographic box is usually somewhat well represented, at least. So Kiss is all inclusive, Matt. It's truly music made for everyone.
Now, is this a cruise or is it stationary in Sarasota?
Stationary, yes. It's on dry land. It's some strange. It was at the same place last year. I don't really understand what the venue is, but the venue has a stage in it that they're going to use for the performances, and I think also a separate like pavilion that they're going to put the vendors and everything in. So,
Sarasota's great, by the way.
I think the weather's supposed to be nice too. Yeah, it's a
great
cute
place.
little place.
Are you aware? Because I know you've been to see some WWE wrestling matches. That Randy the Macho Man Savage and Leaping Lanny Poffo, I believe, both hail from Sarasota, Florida. Did you know that?
I think I did. Yes, but no, I think I knew they were from Florida, but not from Sarasota.
I think so. You might want to pay homage. Maybe there's a reality tour, a Randy Macho Man Savage reality tour that you could do while you're there.
As you might imagine, a couple of my closest of Kiss buddies are also huge wrestling fans. So I might actually mention that to them and see if maybe we can go to his childhood home or anything like that, if it still exists. What's funny is too, and I'll just tell you this up front, so we just to humiliate myself even further and just to preemptively give us more material for the new year, we did decide this same group of us that at the end of January we'll be traveling to Indianapolis to see the WWE's Royal Rumble, which is one of its 4 flagship pay-per-view events out there in the new year. So
that's awesome.
That I'm sure will be a rich and colorful experience that will give me a lot of anecdotes for this program.
And by the way, I'm like pretty sure it's Sarasota. Is it Sarasota?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's where Savage is from, but I could be wrong. So is Zach Kessel coming to Indianapolis with you, or no?
No, he could if he wants to tag along with my ill-conceived, with a crew of ill-conceived Kiss people. But I'm not sure I would want to inflict that on him or anyone else I know who is relatively sane.
All right. Well, you've done it again, dum-dums. You've wasted another perfectly good 40-some minutes of your day listening to us gab. But at least, at the very least, you will get it's a money back guarantee. We promise to, what's our deal, Guy Denton?
They drive us wild, we'll drive him crazy.
If you drive us wild, we will drive you crazy. And I think it's that time again. I think it's cold gin time. What do you think?
I think I'll be seeing a lot of cold gin this weekend, Matt. And hopefully a healthy amount of craziness, but not too much. I'll have to report back on that next week.
All right. Thank you for watching. Safe travels, Guy Denton. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be safe. And I want you to come back and tell us what happened. Take good notes.
Maybe I'll have to get a Kiss Cancer Goodbye shirt and wear it for next week's recording. Just to fully complete just to fully add to my the ignominious act of me talking about this in a public space.
All right. Definitely, I want to see that T-shirt. We'll see you back here in the wrong place, in the wrong time, and the wrong stuff next week. Thanks, Guy.
Always a pleasure, Matt.
If you like what you heard here today, please make sure to follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a like, review the show wherever you get your podcast, and also please smash that like button, or whatever the people my age are saying. I don't know. I am a Kiss fan after all. But nonetheless, you can also follow us on X at WrongStuffPod, or drop us a note, thorning praise or scornful disdain. We accept both at TheWrongStuffPod, all one word, at gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. We're looking forward to next time.